The night my daughter almost disappeared, I had promised myself I would behave. That was the exact word I used while I stood in my bedroom with one earring in my hand and the other already clipped on. Behave, Maggie. Do not ask how long she has known him. Do not ask why he always answers first. Do not ask why your 32-year-old daughter has started saying Nathan thinks before she says what she thinks. Julia was not a child. She had buried her father at 21, watched me work double shifts in a 911 dispatch center, and learned too early how to sound steady when a house was falling apart. Would you pull your grown daughter out with only a stranger's warning? Like this video, subscribe, and tell me in the comments where you would draw the line. If she had finally found a man who could give her a quiet dinner and a clean tablecloth and a laugh that did not have grief under it, I wanted to be the mother who could sit there and let her be happy. So I drove myself to the restaurant in the Strip District, parked 2 blocks away because I needed air, and walked in with a small gift bag and no questions rehearsed. Nathan saw me before Julia did. He rose from the table with the easy timing of a man who had never had to wonder whether people would like him. "Maggie," he said, as if we had been family for years. "You made it." Julia was getting worried. My daughter turned in her chair, bright and nervous, and for 1 second I forgot every warning sign I had been collecting in silence. She looked beautiful. Not young, not foolish, not taken from me, beautiful in a black dress, with her hair pinned up badly because she always missed one piece near her left ear. I kissed that side of her face and told myself to behave. Nathan had chosen the table himself, a corner table with the river side behind Julia and the front entrance in his line of sight. That did not bother me at first. Men who plan events notice rooms. He made a living arranging private dinners, charity receptions, and those polished corporate retreats where everyone wore name tags and pretended not to care about the bill. He knew where servers entered, where coats were hung, when champagne should arrive. He knew the manager, by name. He knew which chair had a wobble before Julia sat down. "Let me put your phone on the charger," he told her, touching the back of her wrist lightly. "Your college friends keep sending videos, and this battery is dying." Julia laughed and handed it over without looking at me. "He has become my tech department," she said. I smiled, because a mother can make an accusation with 1 second of silence. Nathan slipped the phone into the inside pocket of his jacket, not onto the table, not into her clutch, not near the charger I could see at the hostess stand. My old dispatcher brain marked the movement before my polite brain could excuse it. Phone away from owner. Husband between owner and phone. Public setting. No argument yet. I hated that I still fought in incident notes. 27 years of listening to bad nights begin with ordinary sentences had left grooves in me. People called 911 saying, "I don't want to bother anyone," while someone was bleeding in the hall. They said, "It's probably nothing," while a child had stopped breathing. Nothing was how danger dressed when it wanted a few more minutes. The dinner was supposed to be a small celebration because Julia and Nathan had married at the courthouse 3 weeks earlier. No circus, Julia had told me, just grown-up, simple, hours. That night there were 8 people at the long table. 2 of Nathan's clients had become friends. A cousin of his was there, along with Julia's co-worker from the hospital billing office, me, the newlyweds, and an empty chair Nathan said was for a late guest who might not make it. The empty chair stayed empty. Behind it, near the bar, an old man stood with his coat still on. He was tall and narrow, with silver hair combed back and one hand pressed against the edge of the host stand. I noticed him because he was not waiting the way people wait for a table. He watched the room the way callers listen to a locked bedroom door. Not curious, counting. When Nathan lifted his glass for the first toast, the old man's face changed. I saw it even across the room. Recognition first, then fear. Then the hard decision people make when fear is no longer private. Nathan did not see him. Julia was laughing at something her coworker said. I held my water glass with both hands and told myself the man could be ill, confused, lonely, drunk, any harmless thing. Then Nathan's phone buzzed. Not Julia's phone in his jacket, his own. He glanced at the screen and stood so smoothly that the sentence around him kept going. "I have to take this outside," he said. He touched Julia's shoulder. 2 minutes. "Don't let your mother steal my dessert." Everyone laughed. I laughed too, half a second late. The old man moved the moment Nathan crossed the glass doors to the patio. He did not run. Running draws hands. He came fast with his shoulders tucked, like a man walking into rain. The hostess started to speak to him, but he lifted one palm, never taking his eyes off me. I remember the ridiculous details because fear always saves useless things: the burgundy knit under his teal-quilted coat, the silver ring on his right hand, and the way one of Nathan's clients stopped with a fork halfway to her mouth. He reached our table and bent so close I smelled cold air and peppermint on his breath. "Get your daughter out of here," he whispered. His hand closed over mine, dry and shaking. Something folded slid into my palm. "Now. Before he comes back." Julia said, "Excuse me," with the hard little laugh grown daughters use when mothers embarrass them. The old man turned his face toward her and I saw, not confusion, but apology. "Please," he said.
"Do not leave with him." Then he stepped back as if his courage had lasted exactly that long. I opened my hand under the table. It was a white paper napkin folded twice, the restaurant kind, the edge damp from his fingers. Written in blue pen were 6 words. "Get your daughter out. Now." My body did what years of dispatch work had trained it to do. It did not debate. It sorted. Warning source unknown. Husband away. Daughter phone unavailable. Stranger afraid of return window. Action buys time. Inaction gives the window back. I closed my fist over the napkin and looked at Julia. "Honey," I said, and my voice came out calmer than I felt. "Come with me to the restroom for 1 minute." "Mom." Julia's mouth barely moved. Her eyes went to the others, then to the patio doors. Nathan stood outside with his back turned, one hand at his ear, his reflection broken by rain on the glass. "Please don't do this." That was the knife in it. She did not ask what was wrong first.
She assumed I was doing something. Maybe I had earned that. Maybe every mother who worries too long teaches her child to hear danger as criticism. I slid the napkin under my purse strap, stood, and put one hand on the back of her chair. "Your clasp is open," I said, loud enough for the table. "On your necklace. Let me fix it where there's light." It was a bad lie, but it was a practical lie. And practical lies are easier for people to accept than panic. Julia touched her throat. The clasp was not open. Her eyes hardened. "I'm fine." The old man had not left. He had moved behind a service station, where a server could block him from Nathan's view. He looked past me toward the front windows and shook his head once. "Not there." I followed his eyes. Through the restaurant glass I saw a black SUV along the curb near the side entrance. Not the valet lane, and not the rideshare pickup. A man in a dark jacket stood beside it with the rear door already unlocked. He was not smoking. He was not checking messages. He was watching the patio door Nathan had used. That was when the note stopped being a strange interruption and became timing. I leaned close to Julia, close enough that only she could hear the part I could no longer soften. "Your phone is in his jacket. A man just warned me not to let you leave with him. There is a car waiting by the side door. You can hate me in 60 seconds, but you are getting up now." Julia did not stand because I told her to. She stood because I put my hand on her clutch and said, still low, "If I am wrong, I will apologize in front of every person at this table." That bought me 1 inch. Not trust, an inch. She rose with the stiff smile of a woman managing a scene, lifted her clutch from under my fingers, and said to the others, "Mom needs me for a second." Nathan's cousin gave me the kind of look people save for older women who drink too fast at weddings. I did not correct him. The old man had already slipped farther back, half hidden by a server carrying plates. The patio door was still closed. Nathan's shoulders were turned toward the street. I moved before he turned around. The restroom sign was past the host stand, but I did not take Julia that way. Restrooms have mirrors, stalls, witnesses who do not want to be involved, and one exit. A service hallway has decisions. I saw a woman in a black blazer step from behind the reservation desk with a tablet in her hand. Her name tag said Dana. I caught her eye the way I used to catch a responder's attention over a radio channel. Not dramatic, direct. "My daughter is not feeling well," I said. "I need a quiet spot away from the dining room. Now, please." Dana looked at Julia, then at me, then past us toward the old man. Something in her face tightened. She did not ask for a story in the open. "This way," she said, and opened a narrow door beside the wine display. Julia hissed, "Mom, what are you doing?" I answered with the only truth that would fit in motion. "Buying time." The door closed behind us on the restaurant noise, and the world changed to stainless steel, rubber mats, lemon cleaner, and the quick private language of staff. Julia stopped so hard I nearly stepped on her heel. "No," she said. "No, you are not dragging me into some back hallway because a random man scared you." Dana kept one hand on the door, listening. I took the napkin from under my purse strap and held it out. Julia did not touch it. "Read it," I said. "Then hate me." She looked once, just once, and the color left the top of her cheeks before anger put it back. "This is insane." "Yes." I folded it again because the words were too naked in that bright hallway. "It may be insane. That is why we are not accusing him in the dining room, we are taking 1 minute." Julia reached for her phone by reflex. Her hand hit her empty clutch. The silence that followed was the first useful silence of the night. Dana saw it too. "Ma'am," she said carefully to Julia, "do you want me to get your phone from your table?" Julia opened her mouth, then closed it. She knew where the phone was. Nathan had it. If she asked for it, the whole table would know something was wrong. That little trap was not proof of danger. It was only a thread. But when a person is tied up, the first thread matters. "There is a staff office," Dana said. "No lock from the outside. You can stand where you see the hallway. I can also call security to this side without making an announcement." Julia glared at me, but she walked. Dana's office was not really an office, just a desk wedged between shelves of rolled linens and a monitor that showed 4 camera angles. The front doors, the bar, the patio, the side entrance. No sound. No clean close-ups. No miracle. Dana said that before I asked, which made me trust her more. "We keep 30 days unless there's an incident," she said.
"If you need something preserved, I need the time window." I gave it to her, the way I had given addresses to ambulances. He left the table at about 8:17. The older gentleman approached right after. Black SUV at the side entrance. Male driver, dark jacket, rear passenger door ready. Julia made a small, furious sound. "Listen to yourself." "I am," I said. "That is why I am not saying your husband committed a crime. I am saying I don't like the sequence." Dana touched the monitor and rewound the side entrance angle. Rain made the picture soft. The SUV's plate was a blur. The driver was mostly a shoulder and a cap brim. But the timestamp mattered. The vehicle had pulled into that curb 3 minutes before Nathan took the call. It did not prove he sent it. It did not prove the driver was waiting for Julia. It proved one thing only. The car was not a ride Nathan summoned after stepping outside. Dana wrote the time on a receipt slip and tore it off from me.
That small scrap of paper was the first solid thing anyone had handed me besides the warning. Julia stared at the screen as if anger might change the order of events. "Nathan plans everything," she said. "Maybe it was for one of his clients." "Maybe," I said. "Then he can explain it after your phone is in your hand." The office phone rang before Dana could answer. She looked at the screen and did not pick up. "Host stand," she said. Another ring came through her earpiece. She pressed it. I heard only her side. "Yes, I understand." "No, sir, she is with her mother." "No, I am not refusing." "She asked for privacy." Julia's eyes snapped to mine. "He knows we're back here." "Of course he does," I said. Nathan was too organized to lose track of a room. Dana listened another moment, and her professional smile hardened around the edges. "Sir, I cannot pull a guest from a private staff area if she does not want to be pulled." She ended the call. Julia whispered, "He probably thinks I fainted." The earpiece buzzed again. This time Dana did not answer. On the monitor Nathan came through the dining room doors from the patio. He did not look alarmed at first. He looked puzzled in a tasteful way, the face of a man whose evening had been interrupted by someone else's poor manners. He touched his jacket pocket once. Julia saw it, so did I. Then he went to the table, bent toward the guests, and spread one hand in a helpless little gesture. The table turned toward me without seeing me. I had spent my life hearing the first version of a crisis matter more than the true one. Nathan was giving them his version, while Julia stood in a linen closet with no phone and a napkin that looked like a prank. Dana said quietly, "He's asking my staff if your mother has medication issues." That landed harder than if he had shouted. Julia's face changed. Not belief, shame. He wouldn't say it like that. Dana did not argue. She only turned the earpiece volume low enough for Julia to hear the next server report. "He says his mother-in-law gets anxious, and he just wants his wife back at the table." That was Nathan's gift. He did not have to call me crazy. He could make concern do the dirty work. I looked at Julia and saw the worst possible thing. She was hurt on his behalf. "He is trying to protect me from embarrassment," she said. "Or protect his timing," I said. Dana lifted one finger. On the side entrance camera, the driver opened the SUV door and looked toward the patio, then toward the service door. He spoke into his phone. A second later Nathan looked down at his own screen in the dining room. Not proof. Still not proof. But it made a line, and lines matter. "Can you save that clip?" I asked Dana. The car arriving, him outside, the call, us coming back here. Dana hesitated. I knew what she was weighing. Guest privacy, restaurant policy, lawsuits, the manager above her, the man in the good suit who knew the owner. Then she reached under the desk, pulled out a small incident log and wrote the time. "I can flag it. I can tell the night manager not to overwrite anything. If police ask, we provide it. If you just ask, I can't hand it over." Good. Limits were honest. Limits meant she was not inventing a rescue to comfort me. Julia rubbed both hands over her face. "I need to talk to my husband." "You need your phone first," I said. The old man appeared in the service hall doorway as if the sentence had summoned him. Up close he looked older than he had across the room, the skin under his eyes loose with exhaustion. Dana straightened. "Sir, you can't be back here." He looked at the monitor, at the SUV, and his voice came out almost gone. "That man outside is not a taxi driver," he said. "He was waiting before Nathan Cole ever walked into this restaurant." Dana did not let Harold all the way into the office. She moved him to the threshold and kept her body between him and Julia, which I respected. A frightened old man can still be wrong. A frightened old man can still hurt a stranger's daughter with a story he needs to be true. "Name," Dana said. He blinked as if she had asked him to remember something from another life. "Harold Pierce. Do you know this family?" "No." His eyes moved to Julia and stayed there for one painful second. "I know him." Julia's jaw tightened. "My husband." The man calling himself Nathan Cole. That was the first time Julia's anger had nowhere simple to go. She looked at me, then at the monitor, then at Harold. Calling himself. Harold swallowed. His hands were empty now, fingers spread against his coat as if he had given away the only weapon he had. Years ago he used another name around my niece, not on every paper. Not where it would be easy, but I saw him. Dana asked the question I would have asked if my mouth had not gone dry. "Your niece, Rebecca Pierce, my sister's girl, 31 when she died." He said died without drama, and that made the hallway quieter. "She went to dinner with a man who made everybody feel silly for worrying. He kept her phone because the battery was bad. He had a driver waiting. Then a private place in the mountains. They told us she wanted quiet." Julia stepped back as if the words had touched her skin. "No. Stop. You don't get to put that on us." Harold did stop. That mattered too. He did not chase Julia with grief. He took one folded paper from his inside pocket and held it toward Dana, not toward my daughter. "I brought this because I thought maybe I was losing my mind," he said. "I was having dinner at the bar, I saw him come in, I saw the way he touched her phone." The paper was a photocopy of an old newspaper clipping, soft at the folds. Dana took it and laid it on the desk. "Rebecca Pierce, 31, found after fall near rental cabin." The article had the flat courtesy of small tragedies. Beloved daughter, administrative assistant, loved hiking. The man with her, according to the article, had called for help after she slipped on wet stone near a creek. No charges filed. Alcohol not suspected. I read it once, then again, searching for Nathan's name. It was not there. Harold saw me looking. Back then he was Nate Collier to some people, Cole to others. I never had enough. Julia sees that weakness like a life ring. "So you don't have proof. You have a sad article and a man who maybe looks like someone." "Yes," Harold said. That is what I have. He did not defend himself. He did not make the article larger than it was. And I have the driver outside. He was there when Rebecca left. Younger then. Same scar through the eyebrow. I did not remember the name until I saw him by that car. Julia shook her head. You expect me to believe my husband is some kind of killer because of an eyebrow? No, I said before Harold could answer. I expect you to wait until you have your phone, and we know why a car is waiting. Julia turned on me so fast, Dana took one step closer. You expect me to stand here while strangers call Nathan a murderer? Nobody said that. He did. He said enough to make leaving alone dangerous. That was the line, and it was not enough for her. I watched her choose between the mother who had embarrassed her and the husband who, in her mind, was probably standing in the dining room worried and humiliated. If the evidence had been stronger, maybe I could have rested inside it. But weak evidence makes the rescuer look cruel. Julia's cheeks were hot now. Do you know what this feels like? She asked me. It feels like you were waiting for a reason. The old accusation inside that sentence found every earlier silence of mine. The way I had not asked about Nathan's first marriage, because Julia said he hated gossip. The way I had not questioned why he preferred to drive her everywhere, because she said he liked taking care of people. The way I had accepted Mom. Please don't interrogate him, as if respect meant blindness. Dana's earpiece clicked. He's texting her, she said. Your daughter's phone is lighting up in his hand. He is reading the screen. Julia looked toward the door. Because he has it. Because you dragged me away. Dana's face stayed careful. He just typed something on it. A minute later, my own phone buzzed. Unknown number. A text appeared. Maggie. This is Nathan. Julia is upset. Please bring my wife back before this becomes something it doesn't have to be. Harold flinched at the last phrase. I saw it before Julia did. Something it doesn't have to be, he repeated. His voice scraped. He said that to Rebecca's mother. Julia closed her eyes. Stop. Harold reached into his coat again, slower this time, and produced a small envelope with 2 photographs. One was of Rebecca at a picnic table, laughing at whoever held the camera. The other was a blurry crop from some old event, a younger Nathan standing behind a woman in a green coat. If you loved someone, you could argue it was not him. If you feared him, you could argue it was. That was the trouble. The truth in the photograph was not strong enough to carry the room. I took this from a church fundraiser page before it disappeared, Harold said. I gave it to the county deputy back then. They said it proved nothing. They were right. He looked at me, and I understood the punishment he had lived with. Being right too weakly is its own kind of prison. Rebecca had no bruises anyone could use. The creek was wet. The cabin owner remembered a nice man who paid cash. The driver was gone before deputies got there. We had grief, not evidence. Dana's office phone rang again. This time she answered on speaker without asking. Nathan's voice came in warm and controlled. Dana? I appreciate your help, but my wife is being held from me during our own dinner. Could you please put Julia on the phone? Julia's chin trembled, not from fear, from humiliation. He sounded exactly like the reasonable person in the building. Harold sounded like a wound. I sounded like a mother with a habit of seeing danger in ordinary things. That was when I understood how Nathan's kind of control worked. He did not need to hide the truth forever. He only needed the first 5 minutes to belong to him. Dana said, Julia can speak for herself. Then she muted the phone and looked at my daughter. That was the decent thing and the dangerous thing. Julia was not a package to be rooted around Nathan. She was a grown woman whose choice still belonged to her. And Nathan knew that better than any of us. My phone buzzed again. Another text from Nathan. Jules, if you love me, walk out by yourself. No mom. No audience. Just us. I had not shown Julia the first message, but this one came to her too. On the screen Dana had angled toward the monitor where Nathan still held her phone. He had typed from her device and from his own number, covering every channel. Julia read the line, and her mouth softened before she could stop it. Jules. He knew what name would reach her. He knew the wound I had opened by making her feel managed. He is asking for a conversation, she said. He is asking you to come out alone, I said. Because you turned this into a hostage situation. Harold bowed his head.
Dana unmuted the phone. Mrs. Cole is safe, she said. She will decide what she wants to do. Nathan's answer was gentle enough to make my skin cold. Of course. Julia, sweetheart, if you can hear me, come to the side door. I'll bring your phone. We don't need to scare everyone.
Julia looked at me, and for the first time that night I saw not anger but a terrible wish that I would be wrong. She reached for the door handle. I am going to get my phone, she said, and I am going to hear my husband without you standing between us. I did not block the door with my body. Every instinct I had wanted to, I could picture exactly how it would look if I grabbed my daughter's arm in a restaurant hallway while her new husband asked politely for her outside. Nathan had already built that picture for everyone else. I would be the frantic widowed mother, Julia would be the embarrassed bride, Harold would be the strange old man with a dead niece and not enough proof. The car would become a misunderstanding, the phone would become a dead battery. I stepped aside because the only thing worse than losing Julia's trust was making Nathan's story true. I will walk behind you, I said, not with you, behind. Julia's laugh was wet and angry. How generous. Dana put a hand on the office phone. I can ask security to stand at the side door. No, Julia said. No more audience. She took one step into the hall, then turned back to me. You always said you trusted me to know my own life. I had no defense that would not sound like a betrayal of that promise. I do trust you, I said. I don't trust the setup around you. She looked at the folded napkin in my hand. You wanted this, she said. You wanted a reason to prove he was wrong for me. That sentence did not shout, it landed quietly and took the strength out of my knees. Because part of it was almost true. I had wanted a reason I could name. I had wanted my unease to stop being just the ugly private weather of a lonely mother. I had not wanted danger. But in Julia's eyes, the difference had disappeared. The hallway opened into a narrow bend near the kitchen pass, and from there we could see the lobby. Nathan had positioned himself where the dining room could watch him, and the patio glass could reflect him. He held Julia's phone in one hand, like evidence of care, not control. Two guests stood behind him. One was the cousin who had looked at me earlier. The other was Julia's coworker, pale and confused, already wearing the face of someone dragged into family business. Nathan saw Julia and did not rush. That was the worst part. A guilty man in a cheap movie would lunge or shout. Nathan's face softened. There you are, he said. Jules, honey, what happened? He did not look at Harold. He barely looked at me. He gave Julia a clean path back into his version. I was worried. Your mom scared everyone. Julia's shoulders dropped a fraction. Not because she believed nothing was wrong, but because he had offered her a way out of humiliation. She could walk to him, take her phone, apologize for the interruption, and turn the last 10 minutes into my problem.
The cousin said, Maggie, maybe let them talk. He meant it kindly, which made it worse. Dana stayed behind the service door with her radio visible. Harold stood farther back, both hands against the wall. Nathan lifted Julia's phone. Come here and unlock this, please. Your mother keeps texting me from unknown numbers, and I don't want anything misunderstood. It was a smooth lie. I had sent nothing. But now the coworker looked at me, the cousin looked at me. The first version was thickening in the air. I held up my own phone. I haven't texted you. Nathan's eyebrows pulled together with perfect concern. Maggie, this is exactly what I mean. Let's not do this where Julia has to watch. He made my name sound like a hand on my shoulder. Julia turned on me. Stop answering him like he's on trial. He has your phone. Because I gave it to him. Then ask him to hand it to Dana. Her face changed again, a flash of uncertainty, and Nathan saw it. Of course, he said.
Whatever makes everyone comfortable. But he did not hand it to Dana. He stepped closer to Julia, phone still in his palm. One step, then another, each step small enough to look harmless. I knew that rhythm from calls where a person said an ex was only on the porch, then only in the doorway, then somehow inside. I said, Julia, come back behind the service door. She did not. You didn't like him from the beginning, she said. You smiled, but you didn't. I could have lied. Instead, I made the mistake of telling the truth at the worst possible time. I saw things I should have asked about. Her eyes filled. So you let me marry him and waited until tonight to explode?
Nathan lowered his gaze, as if the accusation pained him too much to use. That was his opening, and he took it softly. Jules, your mom is scared of losing you. I understand that. But you and I don't have to punish her in public. Come with me.
We'll get your coat, go somewhere quiet, and tomorrow we can all talk when she has rested. Rested. A kind word with a lock hidden inside. Harold whispered behind me, not outside. It was not loud enough for Nathan to hear, but Julia heard it, and it made her angrier. You don't know me, she said to him. You don't know my marriage. Harold took the blow as if he deserved it. Maybe he did, in his own mind, for arriving years too late for Rebecca and minutes early for Julia. Dana's radio crackled. Side door has movement. Nathan's eyes flicked, just once, toward the hallway that led there. I stepped closer to Julia, not touching. Ask him why the car was there before his call. Nathan smiled sadly. Because I arranged a surprise. A private place for tonight after dinner. I wanted one quiet night away from phones and your mother's worry. He had an answer ready, and because it was romantic, it hurt worse. Julia looked at me as if I had smashed something delicate. You see. A surprise. Then why didn't you tell her? I asked. Because that's what surprise means, Maggie. The cousin gave a short, uncomfortable laugh. The coworker lowered her eyes. I felt the room leaving me, person by person. Nathan held the phone out, now, finally, but only to Julia. Take it. Unlock it. You'll see nothing except your friends making jokes and me trying to reach you. Julia moved. I moved, too. Don't go past the side door. I am not 12. No, you are not. That is why I am asking, not dragging. She stopped with her hand on the service door frame. For 1 second I thought the word asking had reached her. Then Nathan said, almost too softly, Jules, I need you to choose us. She opened the door. Rain pushed cold air into the hall. The side entrance faced a narrow service lane lit by one yellow fixture and the reflected red of a delivery truck's brake lights. The black SUV was 10 yards away, rear door open now, engine on. Troy stood beside it with one hand on the door frame and the other holding a folded coat. He looked like a driver. That was the power of it. Not a kidnapper, not a thug, not anyone a stranger would stop. A helpful man in a dark jacket, waiting to take a bride to her husband's surprise. Nathan moved behind Julia, not touching her either. He understood the theater of hands. See, he said, just a car. Julia stepped onto the wet concrete. I followed. Dana came after me with her radio. Harold stayed inside until he saw Troy's face clearly. Then the old man made a sound I had only heard from people on calls when they found someone they had spent hours hoping not to find. Troy looked toward us, and for one clean second his expression broke. Recognition went both ways. It vanished almost immediately, but Dana saw it. I saw it. Julia did not. She was looking at Nathan. Give me my phone, she said. Nathan held it out, but not close enough for her to take without stepping farther from the door. I opened my 911 screen with my thumb and pressed call before courage could drain out of me. I said the address under my breath. Not an accusation, just the address, the plate prefix Dana had read aloud, and possible unsafe removal. Julia turned back once, eyes shining with fury and hurt. If you follow me to that car, she said, I don't know how we come back from it. Then she walked toward Troy. The 911 operator answered in my ear, while my daughter walked away from me. For a moment I was split into two women. One was the retired dispatcher who knew to speak clearly, not cry, not accuse what she could not prove. The other was a mother watching the back of her daughter's black dress move toward an idling SUV. Pittsburgh, what is the address of your emergency? The operator asked. I gave the restaurant address, the side entrance, the partial plate, and the phrase I had already chosen because it was true enough to survive questions. Possible unsafe removal of an adult woman, new husband has her phone, unknown driver waiting. Witness says driver is connected to a prior death. The operator repeated adult woman, and I knew what that meant. Julia was not a missing child, she was not unconscious. She was not screaming. She was choosing, and choices slow help down. Troy lifted the folded coat as Julia came closer. Ma'am, it's cold, he said. His voice was ordinary, almost bored. Nathan followed several steps behind, close enough to guide the scene, far enough to deny pushing it. Jules, get in for a minute.
We'll talk in private. Julia stopped beside the open door. The interior light made the back seat look clean and warm. A bottle of water waited in the cup holder. A gray blanket lay folded on the seat. Nothing in that cart screamed danger.
That was why my hand shook. Danger that announces itself is easier to fight than danger that looks like comfort. Julia held out her hand for the phone. Nathan smiled and stepped to her left, angling his body between her and me. Unlock it first. I don't want your mother saying I hid anything. It sounded reasonable again. Troy reached for Julia's clutch. I'll put your bag in back, ma'am. He did not yank it. He used the small courtesy people accept before they realize they have given something away. Julia let go for half a second, then seemed to understand and grabbed the strap again. The clutch hung between them like a question. I said into my phone, "Driver has physical contact with her bag." The operator asked whether there were weapons. I said, "None visible." That word visible saved me from guessing. Nathan's face flickered when he heard it. "Maggie, are you calling police on your own daughter?" Julia turned then. "You called 911. I called in the facts." Her face crumpled, and for one terrible moment I thought shame would make her get into the SUV just to prove she could. Nathan saw it too. "Jules, we don't have to stay here and be recorded like criminals." Troy opened the door wider. The rear seat waited. Harold moved beside me, too fast for his age, and stared at Troy's face. "Mercer," he said. Not loud. But the name hit the wet pavement like a dropped tool. Troy's hand tightened on the top of the car door. Nathan went still. Julia looked from one man to the other, finally seeing the reaction before anyone could smooth it away. Troy recovered first. "Don't know you," he said. "Sir, step back." Harold's voice broke open. "You drove Rebecca from the Lantern House. You wore a brown cap. You told my sister she asked for quiet." Nathan gave a short laugh that did not belong to the weather. "This is absurd. Now he's inventing names." But he had made one mistake. He looked at Troy before he looked at Julia. My daughter saw it. She still did not believe, not fully, but the clean marriage story took its first visible crack. "Nathan," she said, "who is he?" "A driver. His name. Troy." "Troy what?" Nathan's patience thinned around the mouth. "Jules, this is not how adults handle stress." That sentence would have worked 10 minutes earlier. Now it sounded too much like a hand closing. Dana stepped into the rain with her radio up. "Security has the plate," she said. "Police are on the way." Troy's eyes went to the street. The SUV engine changed pitch, just slightly, as if his foot had touched the pedal. I repeated the plate into the phone. The operator told me officers were en route. "Stay on the line, do not put myself between the vehicle and the victim." Victim. She used the word because I had given enough facts for her protocol, not because the law had decided anything. Julia heard it anyway. "I'm not a victim," she said. I said, "Then don't let them make you one." It was the harshest thing I had said to her since she was a teenager, and it stopped her more than pleading had. Nathan's face changed for the first time. Not into rage, into calculation without the cover on. He slipped Julia's phone into her hand, as if he had always meant to. "Fine, call anyone you want, but get in the car first, so we aren't standing in an alley with your mother performing for police." Julia looked down at the screen. It was unlocked. Her messages were open. At the top was a draft to me that she had not written. "Mom, I need space tonight. Nathan is taking me somewhere quiet. Please don't follow." The words were not monstrous. They were almost kind. That made them worse. Julia stared at them, and I watched understanding arrive slowly enough to hurt. "I didn't type this." Nathan reached for the phone. "It was a draft, Jules. I was trying to help you say what you couldn't." Troy grabbed the clutch strap again, harder this time. Julia pulled back. The strap snapped against her wrist, and the sound was small but final. Dana shouted into her radio. Harold lunged one step and nearly fell. I moved toward Julia, then stopped because the operator was in my ear telling me not to get between the vehicle and the door. Troy released the clutch, as if burned, jumped into the driver's seat, and threw the SUV into reverse with the rear door still half open. The open door clipped the edge of a trash bin and bounced. Nathan said, "Troy, stop," but he said it too late and too low.
The SUV backed toward the service lane. Dana turned her whole body toward the camera above the door and yelled, "We have the plate. We have you on video." Troy braked just long enough to look up at the lens. That look saved us almost as much as the note had. It was not fear of police exactly, it was fear of being placed. Being fixed to a minute, a door, a plate, a face. Troy slammed the rear door from inside, shifted, and rolled toward the alley mouth.
He did not peel away. He was too practiced for drama. The SUV moved like an ordinary vehicle, leaving an ordinary restaurant. The operator asked direction of travel. Dana shouted it. I repeated it. Harold was crying now, soundlessly, one hand clamped over his mouth. Julia stood with the phone in one hand and her clutch strap twisted around the other, looking at Nathan as if he had become a stranger by inches. Nathan recovered with terrifying speed. He panicked because your mother called police, he said. This is what hysteria does. It makes normal people afraid. Julia looked down at the draft message again. Why did you write like me? Because I know you. Why did he take my bag? He was helping. Why did Harold know his name? Nathan's eyes moved to me, and I saw the first clean hatred of the night. Not loud, not hot, clean. Because your mother found a grieving old man and gave him a stage. Sirens were not close yet, but the sound existed somewhere beyond the rain.
Julia stepped backward until her shoulder touched mine. She did not lean into me. She did not forgive me. She simply stopped moving toward the car. That was the midpoint of my life as a mother. Not a victory, only one step not taken. Screenshot it, I told her, pointing at the draft before Nathan could reach again. Her thumb moved once. The image saved to her phone at 8:31, and Dana wrote the time in the incident log. A patrol car turned into the service lane 20 seconds later, lights off but unmistakable. Dana lowered her radio and said, "Maggie." Security caught the plate clearly when he looked up. The first officer who stepped out of the patrol car did not arrive like a savior. That mattered. He arrived like a man responding to a messy call involving adults, rain, alcohol possibly, a family celebration, and words that could turn into lawsuits if repeated carelessly. His partner spoke to Dana, he spoke to me. Nathan stepped forward before either of us could finish.
Officer, thank God,
he said, and I hated him for choosing those words so well. My mother-in-law is having some kind of episode. She pulled my wife into a staff area and called police because I arranged a private surprise. The officer held up one hand. "Sir, I'll get to you." Nathan obeyed immediately. Obedience can be another form of control when it makes the other person look unreasonable. I gave the officer facts in order. Warning note, phone in Nathan's possession, SUV arrival time, driver contact with bag, draft message, old witness identification, plate captured, vehicle leaving. I did not say murderer. I did not say kidnapping. I did not say I knew what would have happened if Julia got in. The officer wrote without promising me belief. Julia stood under the overhang with her phone clutched to her chest. She looked soaked and furious and younger than 32. Harold had sat down on the wet curb despite Dana trying to bring him a chair.
Nathan watched everything, face wounded, hands visible. A second patrol car pulled in. Still no sirens. No drama. Just the slow machinery of facts beginning too late. Inside Dana's office, the footage looked weaker than the night had felt. That is something people who love proof do not like to admit. The camera showed Nathan leaving the table, but not the call. It showed Harold approaching us, but not the words on the napkin. It showed us entering the service door, but not whether Julia wanted to. It showed the SUV at the side entrance, but rain and angle swallowed the driver's face until he looked like any man in a cap. The clear plate came only after Troy looked up, and even that did not explain why he had come. Nathan stood beside an officer and watched the monitor with the sorrowful patience of a man enduring nonsense. "I use drivers for events," he said. "Troy has worked for me off and on. I arranged a cabin night as a surprise for my wife. Her mother saw a car and spiraled." The officer asked why Julia's phone had been in his pocket. "Charging," Nathan said. "Also, people were sending videos. I was making a little montage for her." The answer was embarrassing because it fit the dinner. Julia's college friends had sent videos. The battery had been low. Nathan asked whether he was being detained, and when the officer said no,
He nodded as if that settled the moral question, too. Then the officer asked about the draft message. Nathan sighed. My wife freezes when her mother overwhelms her. I was trying to help her set a boundary. Every object had a costume. Phone as care. Car as surprise. Draft as help. Driver as contractor. Note as panic. A detective arrived 20 minutes later because the plate came back to a vehicle connected to a private transport LLC with an old county flag. Her name was Lena Ortiz. She was not tall, not dramatic, and she did not waste comfort on anyone. She separated us like facts on a page. Nathan in the manager's office.
Julia with a female officer near the courtroom. Harold in a booth with water he did not drink. Me at the corner of Dana's desk, where I could see the monitor and not my daughter's face. Detective Ortiz listened to my sequence without writing down every feeling. When I mentioned Rebecca Pierce, she stopped me. One lane at a time, she said. Tonight first, old case second. That was the most useful sentence anyone had spoken since the note. Tonight first meant we were not crazy for staying with what could be checked. Old case second meant Harold had not been dismissed. Ortiz asked whether Julia had tried to leave willingly. I said, she tried to speak to her husband and get her phone. She had not agreed to leave in the car. Then Ortiz asked Julia the same question. I could hear my daughter's voice through the half-open door. I was going to get my phone, she said. Maybe talk in the car. I don't know. The honesty hurt us and saved us. It did not give the police a clean kidnapping. It did give them a reason to ask why a driver had tried to leave once the plate was called out. Nathan's lawyer voice, or maybe just Nathan's own voice polished for that purpose, rose from the manager's office. Am I free to take my wife home? Ortiz did not answer that question where he could use it. She stepped outside to the second officer, then came back with new information that made the room colder without making the law simpler. The SUV had been stopped 6 blocks away, after Troy pulled into a gas station lot, and claimed he had left because the restaurant staff were threatening him. In the back seat, officers saw a folded blanket, 2 sealed water bottles, a travel pillow, a small toiletry kit, a packet of motion sickness tablets, and a cheap prepaid phone still in its plastic. Nathan said the blanket and water were for the cabin. The tablets were for Julia's car nausea, which was true. She had hated mountain roads since she was small. The prepaid phone, he said, was for a surprise scavenger game he had planned because Julia liked puzzles. I almost laughed, not because it was funny, but because every item had the decency to be explainable by itself. That is how careful people build danger. They do not pack rope and a confession. They pack comfort, medicine, and a story. Ortiz asked whether Julia knew about the cabin. Julia said no. Nathan said surprise again, and the word began to rot in the room. Harold asked if the cabin was near Laurel Ridge Road. Ortiz turned to him. Why? Harold's hand shook so badly the water in his glass moved. Rebecca was found off a service road past Laurel Ridge, different rental, same area. Nathan closed his eyes like a patient man. Detective, grief is making this man connect dots that are not there. Ortiz asked Nathan for the cabin address. He gave it too quickly, then corrected the house number. She noticed. I saw her notice because after years of dispatch work, I watched faces when numbers changed. She had an officer run the navigation history from Troy's dashboard with his consent, or what passed for consent after he understood the car was already stopped. The last destination was not Nathan and Julia's townhouse. It was not a hotel. It was a rental cabin outside Ligonier, listed under a management company that did not answer after 9. The officer on the phone said the booking was for that night. Check-in instructions sent to an email not under Nathan's name. Nathan smiled thinly. My assistant handles reservations. Julia sat down then, not gracefully. The chair seemed to catch her. You told me we were going home after dinner. Nathan turned toward her with such tenderness that I almost understood how he had made my daughter feel chosen. Because you love surprises when you aren't being frightened.
Ortiz put the printed plate still beside Dana's incident log and tapped both with one finger. Here is where we are, she said. I have a driver who left when police were called. A wife who did not know the destination, and a phone that was not in her possession. Ortiz looked at the printed still again. I have a drafted message, she says she did not write. And an old witness I still have to check. That is enough for questions. It is not enough for anyone in this room to pretend this is already solved. She asked Dana to preserve every clip and told a uniformed officer that Julia would not be transported by Nathan or Troy that night. Then she looked at Nathan. What I want to know is why your driver's route was to a closed cabin in the Laurel Highlands instead of your home. By 10 o'clock, the restaurant had stopped being a restaurant for us. The dinner guests were gone or waiting awkwardly near the bar, pretending not to look.
Staff moved around our little police island with the careful resentment of people whose night had become paperwork. Julia sat with her coat around her shoulders, reading her own phone like it belonged to someone else. Nathan had been told to wait in the manager's office, while Ortiz made calls. He objected, politely. Ortiz let him object, politely. That was the rhythm now. Calm pressure meeting calm refusal. The cabin management company finally called back because an officer used the emergency number on the reservation confirmation. The property was a private rental near Ligonier. Check-in by keypad, no staff on site after 7. The booking name was not Nathan Cole. It was Lauren Mills. Julia looked up. Lauren works for him. Nathan's voice came through the office wall almost at once. My assistant books everything. That is not suspicious. Maybe it wasn't. A man who arranged events would have an assistant book rooms. But the confirmation had 2 guests, late check-in, no housekeeping until Monday, and a note that said privacy requested, no owner contact unless emergency. Each piece alone still had a clean suit on. Together they began to look like a room built without witnesses. Ortiz asked Julia to show the draft messages again. There was the one to me. There was another started to Julia's co-worker. Nathan surprised me with a quiet cabin weekend. Phone service is bad. Don't worry if I vanish for a day. Julia read it twice without blinking. I say don't worry, she whispered. I don't say vanish. It was such a small correction that no one answered at first. Then she opened her thread with Nathan and scrolled up. The messages from the past month looked like marriage if you read them lazily. Sleep, baby. I handled it. Let me drive. Send me the code and I'll take care of the bill. Your mom worries because she has no one else. One by one, Julia had defended those sentences as kindness. Now, under the restaurant office light, they lined up beside the cabin and looked like a fence. Nathan asked to come in. Ortiz said no. He raised his voice only enough for Julia to hear. Jules, you know what this is. You know your mother has been waiting for a story that makes me the villain. Julia flinched. That was still his power. He could reach the part of her that had spent years protecting me from loneliness. Ask him why the message says vanish, I said. Julia did not look at me. She spoke toward the closed office door. Why did you write that word? Nathan answered after one beat too many. Because your friends joke like that. I was trying to sound like you. Julia's thumb hovered over her own words, and her face folded inward. No, she said. You were trying to sound like the version of me that wouldn't be looked for. The unknown calls began after that. First Julia's phone, then mine, then Dana's office line. Nathan was still in the building, which meant he had someone else outside the room, or another device. Ortiz let the first call ring out. The second left no voicemail. The third came through as blocked. Julia's screen lit over and over, not with Nathan's saved name, but with numbers that looked like spam. He uses burner numbers for vendors, she said, and then hurt herself. Ortiz asked permission to photograph the call log. Julia gave it. That small yes changed her posture. She was no longer being shown things by me, she was handing things over herself. A uniformed officer came in with more from Troy's stop. The prepaid phone had one contact already entered, initials only, LM. The email on the cabin booking had Lauren Mills in the recovery address. Nathan said through the door, Lauren books all my travel, she has nothing to do with this. Ortiz asked for Lauren's number. Nathan gave one. It went straight to voicemail. Julia knew a different number, and gave that instead. Lauren answered on speaker, breathless, and said, Nathan told me not to talk to anyone after 9. Then she stopped talking because she realized who was listening. Ortiz's voice stayed flat. Ms. Mills, did you reserve a cabin for Mr. Cole and his wife tonight? A long silence. He said it was a private anniversary arrangement. Did Mrs. Cole know? Another silence. I don't know. Julia closed her eyes. The answer was not proof of a crime, it was proof that the surprise had been managed around her, not with her.
Harold had been quiet too long. When Ortiz finally asked him for Rebecca's full name, date of death, and county, he gave all three without hesitation. Then he gave one more thing, the name of the old cabin road where the deputy had found his niece's shoe. Ortiz did not react in front of Nathan. She wrote it down, stepped into the hall, and made a call to someone who knew old files better than patrol officers did. We waited with the kind of silence that makes every fluorescent hum personal. Julia asked Harold, "Why didn't anyone listen to you then?" It was the first question she had asked him without anger. Harold looked at his hands. Some did. Not enough. Rebecca was grown, she had gone willingly. The man with her called for help. There were no marks that told a simple story. Her phone was wet and broken. I sounded like an uncle who needed someone to blame. He did not look at Nathan when he said the last sentence. He looked at me. We understood each other then, not as heroes, but as people who knew how easy it was to be right in a way the world could not use. Ortiz returned with no triumph in her face. "The old file exists," she said. "It was closed as accidental. I am not reopening it in a restaurant office at 10:30 at night." Harold nodded as if he had expected the slap. "But," Ortiz continued, "I am adding tonight's driver identification en route to a supplemental note."
That but gave him enough air to breathe. Nathan heard it too. Behind the office door, something hit the desk. Not hard. Just enough to tell us the smooth man was no longer smooth alone. Julia's phone buzzed again. This time the number was not blocked. It was a local prefix. No name. Ortiz told her not to answer. A message appeared instead. "Old man, last time you were late too. Stay out." The room changed. Until then, Nathan's side still had one clean argument left. Grief, coincidence, motherly panic, ruined surprise. That message did not prove Nathan had typed it. It did not prove Troy had typed it. It did prove someone watching this night knew what Harold had just said and wanted him afraid. Harold read it once and seemed to shrink inside his coat. "Give me the phone," Ortiz said. Julia handed it over without asking me first. Nathan opened the manager's office door, despite the officer outside it. "What now?" he asked. His eyes went to the phone in Ortiz's hand, then to Harold.
"Are we going to let anonymous texts run my marriage too?" Julia stood. "Your marriage?" Her voice was small, but it carried. "Nathan, why does anyone connected to you know there was a last time?" He looked at her with disappointment so polished it almost passed for pain. "Because your mother and this man have been saying it in front of half the restaurant. It was possible. Cruelly, it was possible. Dana, Harold, officers, staff, phones, radios, open doors. A threat can hide inside a crowd as easily as a lie." Ortiz bagged nothing yet. She photographed the screen, wrote the time, linked it to the start of Harold's official signed witness statement, and told him she needed it formal. Harold stared at the message and whispered. "Rebecca called me at 10:43. I missed it. That was the last time too." Julia covered her mouth. The cabin route had stopped being a ruined surprise. It had become a deadline we had interrupted.
Nathan did not confess because men like Nathan do not confess when a better weapon is available. By midnight, his weapon was credibility. A man in a charcoal coat arrived. Not a lawyer exactly, he said, but someone who handled client exposure for Nathan's event business. He brought coffee nobody had asked for, and a voice smooth enough to oil a door shut. "Detective," he said to Ortiz, "my client is being publicly accused of past homicide by a distressed elderly stranger and a mother-in-law who removed an adult woman from a private dinner." Ortiz did not drink the coffee. "Your client is not under arrest." Then he would like to leave with his wife. Julia, who had been silent for 10 minutes, said, "No." One syllable. Nathan heard it from the manager's office and did not speak. The man in the coat smiled at her as if she were a nervous bride again. "Mrs. Cole, everyone understands tonight has been emotional." Julia looked at the phone in Ortiz's evidence photo, then at Harold, who seemed to be aging by the minute under the restaurant light.
"Stop telling me what everyone understands."
The man turned his attention to me. "Mrs. Whitaker, you understand there may be consequences for making emergency allegations that affect a professional person's reputation." There it was. Not a threat shaped like a threat. A consequence shaped like concern. I had been threatened by calmer voices than his. In dispatch, the people who shouted were rarely the ones who scared me most. The ones who scared me spoke about policies and careers while someone bled in the background. I said, I reported a possible unsafe removal and gave facts. The man smiled. You reported a fantasy built on a napkin. Harold made a small sound. Ortiz looked at him. Mr. Pierce, do you need a break? He said yes, too quickly, then looked ashamed of the word. That was Nathan's next victory.
Not winning the room, just tiring the witness until he looked unreliable. Harold's hands shook around the paper cup Dana had brought him. I don't know if I can do this again, he said to me, not to Ortiz. They called me sick back then. Obsessed. My sister stopped answering because every time I talked about Rebecca I gave her the death all over again. Julia knelt in front of him. I had not seen her kneel for anyone since her father was ill. Mr. Pierce, she said, you don't owe me your pain. Harold looked at her face and broke. I owed Rebecca my courage. I am trying to pay late. Nathan's man started to speak. Ortiz cut him off. Enough. Then she slid a statement form toward Harold. You can stop. Or you can give me what you personally saw and heard. Not conclusions. Facts. Harold picked up the pen. It took him 3 tries to write his full name. While Harold wrote, Julia came to the hallway where I stood near the pay station, because neither of us could sit beside the other yet. Were there signs? She asked. I wanted the mercy of misunderstanding, but she did not give it to me. Before tonight, before the wedding, did you see signs? The truthful answer was not clean enough for either of us. I saw things I explained away. Like what? He answered questions for you. He made every plan sound already handled. You stopped driving at night because he said Pittsburgh traffic made him nervous for you. You gave him your pharmacy login because he said he would pick up refills. You stopped calling me on speaker because he said speakerphone was rude. Julia's eyes filled, but she did not cry. And you said nothing. You told me not to interrogate him. I told you not to treat me like a widow you had to rescue from dating. That one cut, because I had done that too, in smaller ways, before Nathan ever arrived. I was afraid if I pushed, you would choose him just to breathe. So you chose silence. No accusation Nathan could make hurt as much as that plain sentence from my daughter. I said, yes. Not because silence had been my only choice, because I had made it. Julia looked toward the office, where Harold was writing about a dead niece and Nathan's man was waiting to punish the living. Then don't make tonight sound like instinct only, she said. It was also guilt. Yes, I said again. This time it cost more. Harold's statement took 40 minutes because Ortiz made him slow down every time grief tried to become conclusion. What did you see? What did Troy do? What did Nathan say? What did Rebecca's old file record? And what did it not record? Harold answered, crossed out, started again. Nathan's man paced by the hostess stand and made 3 phone calls in a voice meant to be overheard. Words drifted over. Defamation, unstable relative, business damages, formal complaint.
Dana's night manager arrived and looked as if he wanted to fire everyone in the building, including the tables. Dana did not back away from her log. I preserved what I saw, she told him. If corporate wants to yell, they can yell tomorrow. That gave me more gratitude than I could express. Nathan finally asked to speak to Julia alone. Ortiz said no. He asked to speak to her with an officer present. Julia said no before Ortiz could answer. Nathan's face did not change, but the man in the coat stopped pacing. A denied audience is a kind of loss for someone who controls rooms. Harold signed the statement. Ortiz made a copy and gave him the receipt number. He held it like it weighed more than paper. Then his phone rang. The caller ID said his sister's name. He stared at it until it stopped. I told her I was done with this, he said. After Rebecca, I promised I would stop making her live inside it. Julia took the receipt number from his trembling hand and read it aloud, softly, so he would know the number existed outside his pain. By the time Ortiz allowed Nathan to leave with instructions not to contact Harold or interfere with the inquiry, the restaurant was almost empty. He did not leave like a defeated man. He put on his coat, thanked the officers for their professionalism, and looked at Julia only once. When you are ready to be my wife again, he said,
You know how to reach me." That sentence found its mark. Julia flinched as if the word wife had become a badge he could take back. Then he turned to me. "You got what you wanted, Maggie." I thought I would answer. I had imagined, in some private angry place, that if I ever caught a man hurting my daughter I would have a line ready. There was no line. There was my daughter shaking under a borrowed coat, an old man with his sister's missed call on his screen, a floor manager risking her job, and a detective who had given us questions, not safety. Nathan walked out through the front door, not the side, because he understood symbols. His man followed. Troy remained elsewhere with officers and his own story. Ortiz asked Julia where she wanted to sleep that night and wrote the answer down instead of letting Nathan's question hang in the air. Julia said, "Not with him." She did not say with me. She said, "Somewhere he does not have a key." That became another fact in the file. Voluntary separate transport. Phone in Julia's possession. Screenshots preserved. Official incident log signed. No private ride with Nathan or Troy. Julia waited until the door closed before she spoke. "Before the wedding," she said, "when I told you Nathan wanted the cabin trip later this summer and you got quiet, was that one of the signs?" I remembered the afternoon exactly. Julia at my kitchen table, laughing about a husband who wanted to surprise her with no cell service. I had made coffee and said nothing. "Yes," I told her. The word was smaller than the damage. Julia nodded once, then looked toward Harold. "Then tomorrow we tell Detective Ortiz all of them," she said. "Not because I forgive you, because I need to know where my own life started disappearing." Julia did not come home with me that night. That detail matters because it was the first decision she made after the restaurant that did not belong to Nathan or to me. Dana called a friend who managed a small hotel near the convention center, and Ortiz had an officer drive Julia there after she gave a preliminary statement. I hated letting her leave in a police car. I hated it more because it was right. If she came to my house while still shaking, Nathan would call it proof I had taken her.
If she went to their townhouse, she would be inside his rooms, with his passwords and his keys, and his version, waiting in every drawer. So Julia chose a third place. A plain hotel room with a deadbolt, her own phone charger, and a front desk clerk who did not know her marriage. I drove home alone, just before 2 in the morning, with the folded napkin, in a paper evidence sleeve, on the passenger seat, because Ortiz had photographed it, and let Julia decide where the original slept until morning. I did not turn on the radio. Every red light felt like a question I had answered late. At home, I sat at my kitchen table and wrote down every sign Julia had asked me to remember. The pharmacy login. The driving, the speakerphone, the cabin joke. The way Nathan had started calling me Maggie before I invited him to. None of it was enough, alone. Together, it was the map of how a woman becomes easier to move. In the morning, Ortiz called at 8:12. I know the minute, because I had been staring at the clock since 6. She did not tell me Nathan was guilty. She did not tell me Julia was safe forever. She told me what could be done. Troy's vehicle and phone would be documented under the current incident. The cabin management company had agreed to preserve the booking records and keypad log. Lauren Mills had called back with a lawyer's number, which meant she was scared enough to stop improvising. Harold's statement had been sent to the county where Rebecca died with a request to compare names, route, driver, and timing. "Request," Ortiz said, "not command. I want you to understand that." I understood. Procedure moves like a tired animal when the person in danger has already stepped back from the car. But it was moving. Then Ortiz asked whether Julia was with me. I said no. "Good," she said. "Let her choose where she stands today." That hurt because it was right again. 10 minutes later Julia texted, "I am alive. I need coffee." Not yours yet. I laughed once and it came out like a sob. Nathan called her 6 times before 9. She did not answer. He left one voicemail and she forwarded it to Ortiz before she sent it to me. His voice was bruised velvet. "Jules, when your mom stops poisoning you, come home and we will fix this like adults." At noon, Julia asked me to meet her in the hotel lobby, not upstairs. She wore the same black dress under a cardigan from the hotel gift shop. Her hair was down. She had bought a notebook because she did not trust her phone anymore, which was the saddest practical purchase I had ever seen. I changed my email password, she said before hello. Bank next, pharmacy after that. He knows too many codes. She opened the notebook. The first page had 3 columns: access, why I gave it, what I take back. It was not a divorce plan yet. It was a map out of fog. Under pharmacy she had written because he said errands were love. Under driving, she had written because I liked being cared for. Under phone, she had written because I thought privacy meant distrust. She let me read those lines without asking for comfort, then she said, I defended him to you because I thought defending him made me groan. I wanted to say everyone does that in love. I did not. I stayed quiet because I thought silence made me respectful, I said. She looked at me over the notebook. We were both wrong. That was the first bridge, narrow and ugly, and strong enough for one step. Nathan called while we sat there. His name lit the screen. Julia watched it ring until it stopped. Then she blocked the number, unblocked it, and blocked it again. I need the record, she said. But I need quiet more. She wrote missed call, 12:18, save screenshot. Ortiz met us at the station that afternoon in a room with a table bolted to the floor. She did not ask Julia to relive the whole night in order.
She asked for permissions, phone extraction, message screenshots, access to the voicemail, permission to contact the hotel about the separate transport. Julia gave them one by one, each yes sounding less like obedience and more like ownership. Then Ortiz explained the limits. What happened last night gives me a current incident. It gives me potential coercive control and a possible unlawful restraint attempt, depending on what Troy says. Ortiz kept her voice level. It gives me witness intimidation concerns, and enough to ask another county to review an old accidental death with new context. Then she looked at Julia. It does not give me a murder charge. It does not make your marriage disappear by itself. It does not stop Mr. Cole from claiming this was a family misunderstanding. Julia nodded as if each limit was a blow she had chosen to stand still for. Harold came in later with his sister. She was smaller than him and angrier than anyone in the building. She did not thank us. She did not have to. She looked at Julia and said, if you got out of the car, that is enough for today. Then she handed Ortiz a box of Rebecca's old papers, not a magic box. Receipts, photos, a copy of the accident report, 2 letters Harold had sent and never mailed. Ortiz accepted it as context, not proof. Harold's sister looked at him then. You promised me you were done. He said, I was. Then I saw her. Nathan's last call that day came while Julia and I were still in the station parking lot. She had turned his number back on because Ortiz wanted the voicemail chain intact. The screen lit, and for a second, both of us stared at it like it was a match near gasoline. Julia answered on speaker without saying hello. Nathan breathed once. Jules, this has gone far enough. No, sweetheart. No, softness. My attorney is documenting everything your mother did. If you come home now, I can keep this from becoming uglier than it has to be. Julia looked at me. I saw fear there, but not the old kind. This fear had its eyes open. Nathan, she said, where was Troy taking me? He laughed quietly. To our surprise. Where was I supposed to sleep? With your husband. Where was my phone supposed to be? The silence after that was the first answer he could not polish fast enough. Ortiz, standing 10 feet away with Harold's box in her hands, heard it too. Nathan recovered. You are confused because your mother needs you confused. Julia ended the call. Then she saved it, labeled it, and handed the phone to Ortiz. I said, do you want me to take you back to the hotel? She looked toward the street, then toward my car, then down at the notebook in her hand. I want to go home, she said. My heart lifted too soon. She saw it and shook her head. Not your house. Not his. Mine, the apartment I had before I sold half my furniture for his townhouse. I still have the lease for 2 more weeks. I want one room he never arranged. We drove there with Ortiz's card on the dashboard and stopped first at a pharmacy so Julia could change the pickup pin from the parking lot. At the apartment, the electricity still worked. Her old kettle was in a box. Her birth certificate, passport, and spare checkbook were in the closet, because Nathan had said those things looked messy in a shared home. Julia put them in a canvas bag herself. I did not touch them. Then she called the landlord and asked, in her own voice, to keep the lease active and change the spare key note. That was how survival sounded on the first day. Not triumphant, not healed, just a woman choosing a door he had not opened for her. 3 weeks later, Nathan's townhouse still had Julia's name on some mail, but not on her body, her phone, or her decisions. That was not a legal ending. It was not a movie ending. It was a woman taking back small objects one at a time, because large words like justice and healing were too heavy to lift yet.
She filed for separation through an attorney Ortiz recommended only as a victim services contact, not as a promise. Troy gave a statement that protected Troy. Lauren Mills gave emails that protected Lauren. Nathan gave nothing except denials wrapped in disappointment. The county where Rebecca died agreed to review the old file in light of the new incident, which meant someone pulled a box from storage and read it with different eyes. Harold called me once after that to say his sister had let him sit in her kitchen again. "We didn't talk about Rebecca the whole time," he said. "Only at the end." I told him that sounded like mercy. He said no, it sounded like a bill still being paid. Julia did not move in with me. She renewed the old apartment month to month, bought a cheap mattress, and kept a chair by the door with her canvas document bag on it. She changed her number after Ortiz had what she needed. She learned which quiet was hers and which quiet had been arranged around her.
I learned not to call every morning. Some rescues continue by not reaching. The practical list became our new family language. Did you change the pharmacy pickup? Yes. Did you remove his recovery email? Yes. Did the bank flag shared device logins? Yes. Did the landlord change the spare key note? Yes. Those yeses were not thrilling, but they were oxygen. Nathan sent one letter through his attorney saying Julia had been manipulated by an overbearing mother and a delusional stranger. Julia read it twice, put it in a folder marked record, and did not answer. The old Julia would have explained herself until she disappeared inside the explanation. The new Julia, or maybe the old Julia uncovered, wrote dates instead. On the 4th week, Ortiz called to say the cabin keypad log showed no entry because we had stopped the night before it reached the door. That should have comforted me. It did not. A thing that does not happen leaves less proof than a bruise. The same call brought a harder piece. Troy's phone had pinged near the restaurant before Nathan's dinner reservation time. Not enough for everything. Enough to damage the surprise story. Julia listened on speaker and closed her eyes. So he was waiting before I even ordered dessert. Ortiz said, yes. Julia did not cry. She wrote it down. Then she set the pen on the table and said, I hate that being alive depends on minutes nobody can celebrate. Our repair did not look like the repair I used to imagine. I had pictured, in selfish moments, Julia finally understanding, falling into my arms, saying I had been right. Instead, she came over on Sundays for 40 minutes, and left before either of us could turn the visit into a trial. Sometimes we talked about Nathan. Sometimes we talked about garbage pickup, soup, a show neither of us liked. Once she asked why I had not remarried after her father died, and I said because I had mistaken fear of another loss for loyalty. She said, I did the opposite. I mistook being chosen for being safe. We sat with that until the kettle clicked off. I apologized again for silence. She said, I know. Not I forgive you. I know. That was what she could give without lying. I accepted it because I had learned something in the restaurant that I should have known from every emergency call I ever took. Forcing a person towards safety can become its own kind of control if you never give the choice back. So I gave choices back badly at first. Then better. Tea or coffee. Talk or quiet. Door open or closed. Ride home or Uber. The questions sounded small. They were not. Every ordinary choice Nathan had absorbed had to be returned in ordinary pieces. Some days Julia took them. Some days she was too tired and asked me to decide. On those days I chose the least permanent thing. Nathan lost more than he admitted and less than I wanted. His largest corporate client paused a retreat contract after Ortiz contacted them about Troy's transport company. He called it reputational sabotage. Julia called it a consequence of using work tools to move your wife without telling her where. Troy's license issue became an administrative matter first, not a headline. Lauren left Nathan's office and sent Ortiz one more email chain showing the cabin reservation had been changed twice. Once from 2 nights to 1. Once from Nathan's name to hers. Helpful, not decisive. Rebecca's file moved from a storage box to a review desk, and Harold's sister began answering his calls on Tuesdays. That was the size of justice for a while. Pause contracts, copied emails, Tuesday calls, a detective who said still open instead of done. I wanted more. I wanted handcuffs. Confession, a judge saying every fear had been reasonable. Julia did not let me dress revenge as care.
If you need him punished so you can forgive yourself, she told me once, that is yours to work on. She was right. I hated that she was right. Nathan still denied everything. He sent one message through attorneys saying Julia could return when she was ready to stop living inside her mother's trauma. Julia printed it, punched holes in it, and put it behind the voicemail transcript. Record, not conversation, she said. That became another yes on her practical list. The original napkin stayed with Julia. Ortiz had the photograph, the time, the statement, the footage, all the things a file could hold. Julia wanted the actual paper back when it was released because, she said, she needed one object that had not been rewritten by anyone. On a Sunday in late spring, she invited me to her apartment for dinner. Not takeout, dinner. Pasta, salad from a bag, garlic bread burned at one edge because she answered the timer late. That afternoon, Ortiz had called with another update.
No clean arrest on Rebecca's death. But the review was active. Troy's old name appeared in a witness note, and Nathan's attorney had stopped calling the restaurant incident a misunderstanding in writing. Small movements. Real movements. Julia put the phone face down after the call and said, I can live with small if it keeps moving. We ate at the little table she had once planned to sell. Afterward she opened the top kitchen drawer and took out a plain white envelope. On the front she had written one word, minute. Inside was the folded napkin, still creased from Harold's hand and mine. The ink had faded at the damp edge, but the words were still there. Get your daughter out, now. Julia did not hand it to me, she laid it between us. I used to think the worst thing you could do was not trust my choices, she said. Now I think the worst thing is letting someone remove choices while calling it love. I said, I should have spoken sooner. She nodded, yes.
Then, after a while, and I might not have listened. That was not forgiveness either. It was truer than forgiveness would have been that day. She put the napkin back into the envelope and slid it into the drawer beside her spare keys. Not with police papers, not with Nathan's letters. I don't want to look at it every day, she said, but I don't want to throw away the minute that saved me. When I left, she locked the door behind me herself. I stood in the hallway until I heard the chain slide into place. Then I walked to my car without calling her name. The next morning, for the first time since the dinner, I waited for her to call me. At 9:06, my phone lit up. Her message said only, coffee next Sunday, my place.
I wrote back, yes, nothing more. Some doors open again, but they have to open from the inside. Thank you for listening to Maggie and Julia's story. If it stayed with you, like the video, subscribe to the channel, and write in the comments whether you think Maggie acted too soon or exactly in time. The next story is already waiting.